Hey guys, tonight we're drifting off into a land of tumbleweeds, dusty boots, and more bad dental care than you can possibly imagine. So grab a blanket, pour yourself something warm, and let's just float back to the so-called Wild West. Now, of course, Hollywood would have you believe the Wild West was a place where rugged cowboys rode off into sunsets, gunslingers had dramatic duels in the middle of town squares, and everyone had perfect chiseled jawlines. But, as you might guess, the reality was, let's just say, a lot more dusty, miserable, and, frankly, gross. If you were suddenly dropped into the Wild West for a single day, you probably wouldn't make it past lunch. And no, not because of a shootout. You'd just get heat stroke, a mouth infection, or accidentally drink bad water. Let's start with the air. It was dry, it was choking with dust, and unless you liked inhaling a cocktail of grit, smoke from wood stoves, and the occasional whiff of horse manure, you were already off to a bad start. Towns weren't exactly known for sanitation. Most people just dumped waste in the street. Imagine walking around in boots that already hurt your feet, stepping carefully so you don't slide into something you'd really rather not name. Now, if you thought you'd just duck into the nearest saloon for relief, congratulations. You've just entered a wooden building filled with sweaty men who haven't bathed in weeks, smoke so thick you can barely see, and whiskey so watered down it could be classified as slightly dirty creek water. But hey, it was cheap, and in the Wild West, cheap was good enough. Speaking of bathing, let's lower expectations. Bathhouses did exist, but not in every town, and not exactly for everyone. For most folks, a bath meant splashing some water on your face if you could spare it. Water itself was a luxury, especially clean water. If you wanted a proper scrub, you had to pay for it, and even then, you were probably reusing the same tub someone else just sat in. Romantic, isn't it? And then there's food. Forget steak dinners or cowboy cookouts from the movies. A lot of what you'd eat was beans. Just beans. Maybe some salted pork if you were lucky. Hard biscuits that could double as self-defense weapons. And coffee so bitter you'd wonder if it was brewed from dirt. Fresh vegetables? Rare. Fruit? Forget it. A diet like that explains why so many people had teeth that looked like they'd been through an actual gunfight. Now, picture you're walking through town in your fashionable cowboy hat, thinking you're blending in. Except you're not. Locals would spot you instantly as someone out of place, because you're not covered in dust, you're not limping from a poorly healed injury, and you don't have that weary, half-dead stare of someone who spent their whole life chasing cattle or shoveling manure. And let's talk about travel. Horses are glamorous in films, sure. In reality, riding one all day meant sore legs, sore back, and a very sore backside. Carriages weren't much better. Wooden wheels, no suspension, just endless rattling over rocks until your spine felt like it had been rearranged by a chiropractor with a grudge. Roads weren't really roads. They were just dirt paths with holes the size of small graves. And if you thought law enforcement might make things easier, well, good luck with that. Sheriffs did exist, but usually there was one guy for hundreds of miles, and he wasn't exactly walking around protecting citizens at all times. More likely, he was sitting in that same smoky saloon trying not to get shot himself. So, if someone stole your horse or your wallet, chances were you'd never see it again. Of course, guns were everywhere. People liked to carry them, but constant shootouts? Not so much. Ammunition was expensive, guns were unreliable, and honestly, most people were too busy just trying to not starve. Still, the occasional drunken fight could end with someone being carried out the saloon doors. So already, one day in the Wild West has you dirty, hungry, sore, and probably broke. And we haven't even gotten to the snakes, diseases, or weather yet. Let's float over there next. So, let's keep wandering down that dusty road. We've already covered the food, the questionable hygiene, and the fact that your spine would be rattling like a maraca after one wagon ride. But the Wild West had another set of charming little details that would make sure your one-day vacation turned into a one-way trip. First up, weather. The Wild West was either scorching hot, bone dry, and capable of frying your skin into leather, or it was freezing cold, with winds sharp enough to make you question why humans even live there at all. You'd be sweating through your dusty clothes by noon, and then shivering in the desert night like someone left you in a freezer. And, of course, weather forecasts weren't exactly available. People just guessed, looked at the clouds and hoped for the best. Then, there were snakes and scorpions. and spiders the size of your hand. Basically, every time you decided to take a nap outdoors, you were also signing up for a surprise encounter with something venomous. Frontier families often woke up to find rattlesnakes curled near their beds, because why wouldn't Mother Nature decide to spice things up? Cowboys actually slept with boots on sometimes, not out of style, but because scorpions love to crawl in there. Nothing says good morning quite like sliding your foot into a live scorpion trap. And while we're on the subject of health hazards, let's just say doctors weren't exactly winning awards out here. If you managed to find a town with a doctor, you were looking at a man whose main tools were whiskey, saws, and a total lack of anesthesia. The phrase "bit down on a stick" wasn't an exaggeration, it was medical advice. Surgery was survival roulette, and infections killed more people than any outlaw with a pistol. So, when Hollywood cowboys get shot in the arm and just walk it off, yeah, no. In real life, you'd be feverish, delirious, and probably gone in a few days. But disease didn't even need bullets. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid, they loved the Wild West. All that unclean water and poor sanitation made for endless outbreaks. People traveled in groups, not for safety from bandits, but because someone had to bury you when you inevitably got sick halfway across the prairie. Now, about the economy. The movies might show saloons full of gold coins and poker chips, but most people were broke. Ranchers scraped by. Farmers fought with drought. Workers were paid in scrip, which was basically store money that could only be spent at one company shop. Imagine working 12 hours a day and getting paid in glorified coupons. Doesn't exactly buy you freedom. And socially, the Wild West wasn't full of glamorous cowboys. It was full of lonely, restless people trying to survive. Towns were rough, crowded, and short-lived. Some vanished within a year when mines dried up or cattle routes shifted. What you got instead were half-finished buildings, mud streets, and the occasional traveling preacher yelling about your sins while you tried to enjoy your beans. Speaking of beans, remember those? Let's talk digestion. A diet heavy on beans, pork fat, and bad coffee meant people were constantly bloated, cranky, and dealing with stomach problems in places that did not have plumbing. Outhouses were basically pits of doom. Privacy? Forget it. Comfort? None. Just the wind, the smell, and your life choices echoing back at you. And yes, violence did exist. But it wasn't glamorous shootouts. It was more like drunk brawls, disputes over cattle, and petty feuds. Most people died from accidents, not duels. Horses kicked, wagons rolled, tools slipped. And with no real safety nets, one small injury could take you out completely. So let's check our tally. In a single day, you'd be sunburned, dehydrated, bitten by something unpleasant, eating beans that made you regret every decision, trying to sleep in dust while snakes lurked nearby, and maybe limping from a splintered wagon ride. By nightfall, you'd be dreaming of your soft modern bed, your running water, and your toothpaste. The Wild West, in short, wasn't wild because it was full of adventure. It was wild because everything was inconvenient, dirty, and designed to break you down. Survival meant enduring constant discomfort, and frankly, you'd probably tap out long before sunset. So next time you watch a cowboy movie, just remember, the hats were cool, sure, but the reality? It was a dusty, bean-fueled nightmare. Now, close your eyes, let the tumbleweeds roll by in your imagination, and drift off. You've survived the Wild West. In your dreams, where at least the whiskey is clean and the snakes stay outside.